My son called them retirement home papers. They were not. The first form reserved an apartment at Willow Creek. The next gave Daniel access to my medical information. Another allowed him to manage my bank accounts, borrow against my property, and sell my house if he decided it was necessary for my care. Then I reached the final document. It authorized a company named Clear Haven Property Solutions to buy my home for almost $200,000 below its appraised value. Daniel sat across from me at my kitchen table, tapping a silver pen beside the signature line. "It's best for everyone, Dad," he said. "You'll be safe, and we can finally stop worrying." I had spent 34 years reviewing mortgages and loan agreements. I knew that the most dangerous sentence in a document was often the one written to sound harmless. I turned to the company information on the last page. Then I looked at my son. "Why does your wife own the company buying my house?" The pen stopped tapping. Daniel's face did not change immediately. His mouth remained fixed in the patient smile he had worn since arriving with a leather folder and a box of blueberry muffins. Only his eyes moved. They dropped toward the papers. Then they shifted toward his wife, Brooke, who stood near my counter arranging muffins on a plate no one had asked her to prepare. Brooke turned slowly. "What company?" she asked. "Clear Haven Property Solutions," I said. "The proposed buyer of my home. Registered owner, Brooke Ellis Mercer." Daniel leaned back. "Dad, you're misunderstanding how the transaction is structured." That answer told me more than a denial would have. An innocent person usually says there has been a mistake. Daniel told me I did not understand the structure. I closed the folder. "Then I'm not signing until someone who represents me explains it." Brooke folded her arms. "This is exactly why we're concerned. You see something unfamiliar and immediately become suspicious. I reviewed financial contracts for a living. That was years ago." Daniel looked sharply at her, but it was too late. I was 71 years old. I lived alone in a brick ranch house outside Columbus, Ohio, where my wife Ellen and I had raised Daniel and his younger sister, Rebecca. The house was not grand. It had 3 bedrooms, a narrow dining room used mostly at Thanksgiving, and a screened porch Ellen had insisted on adding after she retired from teaching. She said every home needed one place where time was allowed to slow down. After she died, I spent most mornings on that porch with coffee and the newspaper. On Sundays, I still used her yellow ceramic mug because she once claimed coffee tasted better from something cheerful. Daniel was 43. He was married to Brooke, and they had a 15-year-old daughter named Sadie. He had always lived with urgency. As a boy, he ran before he learned to walk without falling. As a young man, he changed jobs whenever advancement took longer than he believed it should. Later, he sold medical equipment, managed a dealership, opened a fitness studio, and invested in 2 fast-casual restaurants. Every new venture arrived with the same promise. "This is the one, Dad. This changes everything." I had helped him many times, more than I should have. Ellen told me that once, while we were washing dishes, "You keep removing the floor beneath his consequences," she said. "Then you wonder why he never learns where the floor is." I defended him. I said parents were supposed to help. I said Daniel was ambitious. I said one successful business could make all the earlier failures seem like preparation. Ellen dried her hands and looked at me. Helping him is not the same as making failure painless. I remembered those words while Daniel sat at my kitchen table asking me to sign away control of nearly everything Ellen and I had built. The trouble appeared to begin 6 months earlier, after I fell while cleaning the gutters. The ladder shifted on wet soil, and I came down from about 6 feet. I cracked 2 ribs and bruised my hip. My neighbor, Harold Green, found me sitting in the grass, more embarrassed than frightened. Harold was 74 and had lived next door for 20 years. He always answered his phone on the second ring and never returned a borrowed tool without wiping it clean. He drove me to urgent care and stayed until Daniel arrived. When Daniel saw the bruising along my side, he became pale. "You could have died. I could have used a better ladder." "I'm serious, Dad." "So am I. That thing is older than Rebecca. For the next few weeks, Daniel was attentive. He brought groceries. Brooke hired a cleaning service. Sadie came over twice and made grilled cheese sandwiches while telling me about a boy in her chemistry class who smelled like pickles. I was grateful. That gratitude made me slow to notice when help became supervision. Daniel asked for a spare key. That seemed reasonable. Then he asked for my alarm code. Then the password to my pharmacy account. Then he suggested adding himself to my checking account in case another emergency occurred. I refused. Not because I distrusted him then, but because I had spent my career watching families create financial problems through poorly designed emergency arrangements. I'll make sure the beneficiaries are current, I told him. Rebecca already has copies of my emergency instructions. Daniel frowned. Rebecca lives in North Carolina. That doesn't make her unable to read. I'm the one here doing everything. The words hung between us. He had brought groceries for 3 weeks and driven me to 2 appointments. I had thanked him repeatedly. I had also paid the cleaning service and managed my own medication, bills, cooking, and rehabilitation. Still, I let the remark pass. A month later, he began sending me links to retirement communities. This one has a woodworking room, he said. I have a woodworking room. In the basement. I've been using those stairs since 1989. That doesn't make them safe. At first I laughed. Daniel did not. Brooke told me about a woman at church whose father had moved into assisted living and finally stopped being a burden on everyone. She corrected herself quickly. He stopped worrying everyone. But I heard the first version. Daniel began pointing out every small defect in my house. A loose cabinet hinge became evidence that maintenance was overwhelming me. A cracked walkway became proof that the property was dangerous. A stack of unopened advertising mail became a sign I could no longer manage paperwork. Then, one Saturday morning, I returned from breakfast with Harold and found a woman measuring my living room. She wore black slacks and held a laser measuring device. Daniel stood near the fireplace. Dad, this is Melissa. She's helping us understand the house's value. Melissa lowered the device. I thought the owner was expecting me. I'm the owner, I said. I wasn't expecting anyone. Daniel stepped toward me. Don't make this awkward. That was the first clear violation. Not the documents. Not the retirement home. The moment my son invited someone into my house to prepare it for sale, without asking me. Melissa apologized and left. Daniel blamed me for embarrassing her. I was getting information about selling my home, about your options. I did not ask for options. You refused to discuss anything. I discussed it. I said I'm staying. For how long? As long as I am healthy, competent, and able to care for myself. That isn't a plan. It has worked for 71 years. Daniel paced toward the window. You don't understand what this does to us. What does it do to you? We're waiting for another phone call, another fall, another emergency. I fell once. And what happens next time? I hire someone to clean the gutters. That is not the point. Then tell me the point. He opened his mouth but did not answer. Brooke stood in the hallway. The point is that Daniel has a family and businesses, she said. He can't keep dropping everything whenever something happens to you. He brought groceries for 3 weeks. He drove you to appointments. 2. He arranged the cleaner. I paid the cleaner. Brooke glanced at Daniel. I realized they had built a version of my life in which Daniel was carrying me. Every favor became proof of sacrifice. Every independent decision became proof that I was stubborn. I asked them to leave. After the door closed, I noticed 3 small red markers placed along the living room baseboards. Melissa had begun preparing the room for listing photographs. I removed each marker and lined them up on the kitchen table. For the first time, I wondered how far Daniel had already gone. The next morning, I called Rebecca. She answered while driving her sons to soccer practice. I heard a car door slam and one of the boys asking where he had left his shin guards. Dad, Is everything okay? I'm not sure. That frightened her more than if I had said no. I told her about the realtor. Rebecca became quiet. Daniel told me you asked him to investigate selling. I did not. He said you were struggling to keep up with the house. I painted the porch railing last week. I know. I didn't exactly believe him. I thought maybe you two had talked. We hadn't. She lowered her voice. He's been asking me questions about Mom's estate. What questions? Whether everything passed directly to you, whether the house was in a trust, whether there were restrictions on selling it. When did he ask? After your fall. That was the first sign that his concern was not only about my safety. I told Rebecca not to confront him yet. She did not like that. Dad, he's lying about you. I know. You sound too calm. I'm trying to become calm before I decide what to do. That afternoon, I took out the estate binder Ellen and I had prepared 7 years earlier. Ellen believed important documents should be organized before anyone desperately needed them. She kept wills, insurance policies, account summaries, medical instructions, and funeral preferences behind labeled dividers. Her handwriting appeared on yellow notes throughout the binder. On the section containing our wills, she had written, "Make sure the children inherit love before they inherit property." I sat with that sentence for a while. Then I reviewed everything. The house belonged solely to me. Daniel had no ownership interest and no authority to act on my behalf. My financial power of attorney named Rebecca as my first choice and Harold as backup. Daniel either did not know that or believed I had forgotten. On Monday, I visited my physician, Dr. Samuel Patel. I told him Daniel had begun questioning my ability to live independently and asked whether my fall created any legitimate concern about my health or judgment. Dr. Patel removed his glasses and placed them beside the keyboard. Your ribs healed properly. Your balance testing was normal. You passed your cognitive screening without difficulty. I need an honest answer. That is my honest answer. You are capable of living independently. Would you put that in writing? He studied me. What is happening? I don't know yet. He documented my condition and arranged a home safety assessment. I made several sensible changes. I hired someone to handle the gutters. I installed better rails in the bathroom, brighter lighting near the basement stairs, and a fall detection system. Daniel had been correct about one thing. Independence did not mean pretending I was still 40. But accepting reasonable help was different from surrendering authority. 3 days later, Daniel called and apologized. At least, it sounded like an apology at first. I shouldn't have brought Melissa without confirming, he said. I thought we were further along. We were not anywhere. I understand that now. Do you? He paused. Brooke and I are worried. Maybe we've pushed too hard, but it comes from a good place. I wanted to believe him. He was still the boy I had taught to ride a bicycle in the church parking lot. He was still the young father who had placed newborn Sadie into Ellen's arms with tears in his eyes. Love does not disappear when trust begins to crack. Sometimes love is what makes the crack hardest to examine. Daniel asked me to tour Willow Creek. It's only a tour, he said, no commitment. I agreed. Not because I intended to move. I wanted to learn what he had already told them. Willow Creek was clean and quiet. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish. A woman named Marjorie greeted us and spoke directly to me, which I appreciated. Daniel kept answering for me. What activities do you enjoy, Mr. Mercer? She asked. He used to do woodworking, Daniel said. I still do. Does he need help managing medication? No, Daniel added. Not yet. Marjorie glanced from him to me. During the tour, I asked about independent living apartments. Daniel redirected the conversation toward assisted living. He needs more supervision, he said. Marjorie asked whether I required help bathing, dressing, cooking, or handling medication. No. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Dad, this is not a test. It sounds very much like one. At the end, Marjorie handed me an information packet. Daniel reached for it. She continued holding it toward me. Mr. Mercer should have this. That small act of respect stayed with me. In the parking lot, Daniel was furious. You made me look ridiculous. I answered questions. You contradicted me. You described needs I do not have. He opened his SUV. You always have to be the smartest man in the room. No. But I do have to remain the man making decisions about my own life. He drove me home without another word. That evening, I examined the Willow Creek packet. Most of it was ordinary, but tucked inside was a handwritten note on Willow Creek stationery. Mercer placement expected within 60 days. Home sale will fund long-term care. Son coordinating due to cognitive resistance. I read the final 2 words twice. Cognitive resistance. Not independence. Not disagreement. Resistance. Someone had already been told that my refusal was a symptom. The next morning, I called Marjorie. I asked how Willow Creek had received that information. She sounded uncomfortable. Daniel had contacted them 6 weeks earlier. He had reported multiple falls, increasing forgetfulness, medication confusion, and family concern about my judgment. None of that was true. He said medical documentation would follow, Marjorie explained. Did he say I had agreed to move? He said the family was preparing for a transition. That was not my question. She paused. No, he did not say you had personally consented. I thanked her. Then I wrote down the date, the time, and everything she had told me. For 34 years, I had trained loan officers to separate feelings from facts. A feeling was, my son is trying to control me. A fact was, Daniel told Willow Creek I had suffered multiple falls and medication confusion. A feeling might direct you toward the truth. A fact could survive a conference room. I began building a file. I collected the medical assessment, property appraisal, estate documents, and messages from Daniel. I changed my passwords and instructed my bank not to add any new authorized user without speaking to me in person. No money was missing. That gave me some relief. Daniel had not taken control yet. He was creating a situation in which I might appear to give it willingly. A few days later, Sadie called me. She did not usually call. Most of our communication came through text messages containing abbreviations I sometimes had to look up. Grandpa, are you moving? Who told you that? Dad said Willow Creek has a room for you. I toured it. He said your house is being sold. It is not. She became quiet. Are you mad at him? I'm trying to understand what he's doing. Sadie took a breath. He and Mom keep fighting about money. What money? The restaurants. Mom said they can't borrow anymore. Dad said once your house is handled, they can breathe again. There it was. A larger question. Why did Daniel believe the handling of my house would solve his financial problems? I told Sadie she had done nothing wrong and should not place herself between her parents and me. I don't want you to go away, she said. I am not going anywhere because someone else announced it. When the call ended, I contacted an elder law attorney named Lillian Price. I knew Lillian from my credit union days. She was careful, direct, and never promised a result before reading the documents. She listened without interrupting. Then she reviewed my estate plan. Daniel cannot force you into assisted living merely because he believes it would be convenient, she said. I know, but convenience may not be his only motive. No. She advised me not to threaten Daniel or change my entire estate plan while angry. We need to see what he is actually asking you to sign, she said. Suspicion is useful. Evidence is better. Before I left, she asked whether Daniel had borrowed money from me. Yes. How much? I gave her the total. Approximately $80,000 over 15 years. Some had been documented. Much of it had not. He had repaid $22,000. Lillian's expression remained neutral, but hearing the numbers aloud embarrassed me. Ellen had objected to many of those loans. I had continued after her death because refusing Daniel felt like abandoning him just before the success he always promised was coming. My blind spot was not merely generosity, it was pride. I wanted to believe my support was building his future. Admitting that he had become dependent on rescue meant admitting I had helped teach him to expect it. I made it easy for him to think my assets belonged inside his plans, I said. You may have encouraged an expectation, Lillian replied. You did not authorize deception. 2 days later, Daniel invited me to dinner. Brooke cooked pot roast, my favorite. Sadie barely spoke. Daniel asked about my doctor's appointment and complimented the new safety rails. For 20 minutes, the evening felt almost normal. Then he placed the leather folder beside my plate. This just simplifies the transition, he said. The first form reserved an apartment at Willow Creek. The second authorized Daniel to communicate with the facility and obtain my medical records. The third named him as my financial agent. It allowed him to manage my accounts, borrow against my assets, and compensate himself for handling my affairs. The fourth authorized the sale of my house. The final document named Clear Haven Property Solutions as the buyer. The proposed price was $380,000. My home had recently been appraised at $575,000. The company had been created 11 days earlier. Its owner was Brooke. That was when I asked why his wife owned the company buying my home. After I closed the folder, Daniel offered several explanations. First, he said Clearhaven was only a purchasing vehicle. Then he said the low price accounted for repairs and the convenience of a fast sale. Finally, he admitted the company would renovate the house, resell it, and use the profit to keep his restaurants operating. Brooke stopped pretending not to understand. We're not taking anything from you, she said. The house will belong to Daniel someday anyway. You assume that. He's your son. So is Rebecca, my daughter. She has her own life, Daniel said. She doesn't need this. And you do? He looked directly at me. Yes. The honesty surprised me. He explained that one restaurant had already closed. The second was behind on rent. He had personally guaranteed equipment, loans, and used credit cards to cover payroll. Clearhaven would purchase my house using money from an investor. After repairs and resale, Daniel expected to clear enough profit to stabilize the remaining restaurant. And I would live at Willow Creek, I said. You'd be safer. With my own money. Of course. At more than $6,000 a month. You can afford it. And the discount on my house? The value stays in the family. No, the value moves from me to you. Daniel's jaw tightened. You have more than you need. The room became very still. Brooke looked at him. Sadie stared down at her plate. Daniel continued. You have a paid-off house, retirement income, investments. I have employees and a daughter to support. You also have debt. I am trying to fix it. With my home. With an asset that will eventually come to me. I looked at Brooke. Did you plan this together? She pressed her lips together. Daniel answered. We are trying to save our family. By describing me as cognitively impaired? His expression changed. I never said impaired. You told Willow Creek I had multiple falls, medication confusion, and cognitive resistance. Brooke turned toward him. You told them what? Daniel ignored her. Those people need context. False context? You do forget things. Everyone forgets things. You called Sadie by Rebecca's name. Once. You lost your garage remote. It was beneath the passenger seat. You repeated a story at Christmas. Brooke whispered, Daniel, stop. But I understood now. He had been collecting ordinary aging moments and arranging them into a narrative of decline. For years, I had taken his repeated failures and treated them as isolated mistakes. He had taken my isolated mistakes and turned them into a pattern. Sadie stood. I don't feel good. Brooke told her to sit down. I said I don't feel good. She left the room. Daniel lowered his voice. You're upsetting everyone. I brought no documents into this house. We need an answer by Friday, he said. The investor's offer expires. That deadline told me the transaction was already far advanced. I placed the folder under my arm. Daniel reached for it. Those are our originals. They concern my authority, my money, and my property. I can send you copies. My attorney will review these. Brooke stood. You're bringing a lawyer into a family matter? These papers brought a lawyer into it before I arrived. Neither of them denied that. I left. That night, I did not feel victorious. I felt sick. Daniel had not made one panicked suggestion. He had contacted Willow Creek, created a company, found an investor, undervalued my house, and prepared documents that would give him control over my finances. Still, part of me searched for a version of events in which he was merely frightened. Desperation can explain a bad decision. It cannot erase months of planning. Lillian reviewed the documents the next morning. The power of attorney was broader than Daniel had admitted. The sale authorization contained a statement saying, I accepted the below-market price because of urgent care needs. No physician had identified urgent care needs. The money from the sale would have passed through an investment account connected to Daniel's proposed transaction. Lillian pointed to the signature page. A notary's name had already been printed. I recognized it. He was the accountant who handled Daniel's restaurants. Do not sign anything, she said. I wasn't planning to. Stopping the transaction is easy. Understanding everything Daniel has represented to other people may take longer. She asked what outcome I wanted. To remain in my home. That is straightforward. To stop Daniel from using my name or assets. Also possible. And to protect Sadie if his businesses collapse. Lillian studied me. You are still trying to rescue part of the situation. I will not rescue Daniel's restaurants, but I will not deliberately leave a 15-year-old without stability if I can avoid it. That became my moral boundary. I would not sign. I would not finance his business. I would not lie, threaten, or publicly humiliate him, but I would separate an innocent child's safety from her father's consequences. The first complication came from Rebecca. When I told her everything, she wanted me to report Daniel and the accountant immediately. Not yet, I said. He wrote false statements about your health. I need to know where he used them. You're protecting him again. I'm trying to be accurate. You always have a careful explanation for Daniel. The words cut deeper because they were true. You did it when we were children, she continued. He broke something, and you asked what pressure he was under. He lied, and you wondered what he was afraid of. You always made him explain himself. You expected me to simply behave. I sat quietly. Rebecca had spent her life watching Daniel receive second chances while she received praise for not needing them. I owe you an apology, I said. She went silent. For what? For treating your reliability as permission to give you less attention. Her breathing changed. I wasn't asking for money. I know. I wanted you to notice. I should have. That conversation changed the meaning of the story. Daniel's entitlement had not begun with the retirement home papers. It had grown inside a family pattern I had helped maintain. Acknowledging that did not make his actions my fault, but it did make the solution larger than simply blocking one transaction. Lillian sent notices to Willow Creek and the investor stating that Daniel had no authority to act for me. Willow Creek removed him from my file immediately. The investor responded with concern. Daniel had already provided a summary of my assets, including my home, retirement income, and investment accounts. The summary described me as declining, resistant, and unable to make timely care decisions. Some financial figures were accurate. Others were estimates. Daniel had obtained enough information over the years to make the summary appear credible. The investor had repeatedly requested proof of my consent. Daniel had promised signed documents by Friday. Then Brooke came to my house alone. She stood on the porch in a gray coat with no folder in her hands. I need 5 minutes. I let her in. She remained standing in the living room. Daniel is falling apart, she said. I am sorry to hear that. You can stop this. How? Tell the investor you changed your mind. I never agreed. They don't need every detail. They were given my financial information. Daniel did that. Your company was buying the house. She looked toward the window. I created Clear Haven because Daniel said it was the only way to protect your care and keep the restaurant alive. Did you believe I needed assisted living? She hesitated. I believed you might eventually. That is not the same. No. It was the first completely honest answer she had given me. Did Daniel tell you I agreed to sell? He said you were resistant, but that you would sign after the options were explained. Did you ask why the purchase price was nearly $200,000 below market value? He said the house needed repairs. Not $200,000 worth. Brooke sat. The sharpness left her face. We owe almost $600,000, she said. The amount was worse than I expected. Would the house profit solve that? She looked down. No. How long would it keep the restaurant open? I don't know. Daniel must know. He said it would buy enough time to turn things around. And if it did not? She covered her face with both hands. Daniel did not see my house as a complete solution. He saw it as the next rescue. After the money was gone, the restaurant would still be failing, and I would still be paying Willow Creek every month. Brooke lowered her hands. There is something else. She told me Daniel had transferred most of her retirement account into the restaurant. She had signed forms, but he had described them as routine tax and investment documents. She admitted she had not read them carefully. Did you know the account was being used as collateral? No. Can you prove what he told you? I don't know. I did not call her foolish. People trust spouses with documents every day. That trust can become a tool in the wrong hands. I told her to speak with her own attorney. Then I asked whether she would provide Daniel's investor emails and business projections to Lillian. Brooke looked frightened. Are you going to have him arrested? I do not know that he committed a crime. Will you sue us? I am trying to stop him from using my life as working capital. She left without agreeing. The next afternoon, Sadie arrived at my house after school. I couldn't go home yet, she said. She sat at the kitchen table holding Ellen's yellow mug with both hands. My parents screamed all night, she said. Dad said you destroyed everything. Mom said he lied to her too. About what? The investor. Dad told her the money was already approved. It wasn't. I know. She looked at me. Are we going to lose our house? I don't know. Can you fix it? The answer I had given Daniel his whole life rose automatically. Yes, I'll take care of it. I stopped myself. I can help make sure you are safe, I said, but I cannot make every consequence disappear. She looked disappointed. Then she nodded. That may have been the first honest promise anyone in our family had made during the crisis. Brooke collected her an hour later. Before leaving, she handed me a flash drive. I copied the investor emails and the projections, she said. There are things I didn't know. The files changed everything. Daniel had contacted the investor 3 months before my fall. My accident had not created the plan. It had given him an excuse to accelerate it. In one email, he wrote, My father is aging in place, but will need transition soon. The residence is mortgage-free and effectively part of my future inheritance. In another, he may resist initially, but I handle most of his affairs and expect cooperation once the complete plan is presented. He did not handle my affairs. He was describing the authority he intended to obtain as though he already possessed it. The business projections were worse. Even if Clear Haven purchased my home cheaply and resold it at the highest predicted price, the profit would not stabilize the restaurant. It would cover past due obligations, legal expenses, and perhaps 4 months of continued losses. 4 months. That was all Daniel expected my house to buy. He wanted me to surrender my home, authority, and independence to delay his business failure for 1 season. The financial truth gave me the final answer I needed. Friday's meeting took place at Lillian's office. Daniel believed he was coming to finalize the transaction. He arrived carrying the leather folder and the same silver pen. His accountant came with him. Brooke was already seated beside an attorney of her own. Rebecca sat to my left. Daniel stopped at the doorway. "What is this?" "A meeting," I said. "You said we were discussing the transition." "We are," Lillian replied. "Just not the one you expected." Daniel looked at Brooke. "You gave them the files." She did not answer. He sat slowly. Lillian began with the simplest issue. I was not moving to Willow Creek. My medical and home safety assessments confirmed I could live independently. Daniel glanced at the reports. "Doctors miss things." "What did they miss?" I asked. "The forgetfulness, the confusion." I placed the list of examples from his files in front of him. "Which one proves confusion? The garage remote or the repeated Christmas story?" His face changed. Brooke stared at the page. "You made a list?" she asked. Daniel ignored her. "You don't see yourself objectively." "Neither do you." Lillian then placed his investor email beside the asset summary. "You represented that you managed your father's affairs," she said. "What authority did you have?" "I was coordinating for the family." "Your father did not authorize you." "He would have." "That is not authority." The accountant shifted in his chair. Lillian showed him the sale authorization containing the statement about urgent care needs. "Did you verify this medical claim before agreeing to notarize the transaction?" "I was told the family had documentation." "By whom?" The accountant looked at Daniel. "By my client." "Did you represent Mr. Mercer?" "No." "Did anyone independently explain these documents to him?" The accountant closed his notebook. "I think I should speak to counsel before answering additional questions." He left less than 5 minutes later. Daniel watched the door close. Then he looked at me. "You were never supposed to read all of it by yourself." The room became silent. Daniel seemed to hear the sentence only after it had escaped. "I mean, we were supposed to explain the package together. You told me they were retirement home papers. They were part of a larger plan. A plan that worked only if I did not understand the cost." He pushed back from the table. "What do you want from me? You want me to admit I was desperate? Fine. I was desperate. I have employees, debts, a wife, and a daughter. Everyone expects me to keep everything standing. And you expected me to stand underneath it. You had the resources. I had a home. You had an asset. I had a life." Daniel looked toward Rebecca. This is what she wanted. She has been waiting for a chance to turn him against me. Rebecca began to speak. I raised my hand. "This is not about Rebecca. It always is. She doesn't need anything, so she gets to act righteous." "No, that is how you justified taking more. You decided her independence meant she deserved less, and your dependence meant you deserved more." Daniel's face hardened. "I stayed here. I helped you. You brought groceries after I fell. I did more than that. You also invited a realtor into my home, described me as cognitively declining, and attempted to purchase my property through your wife's company at a $200,000 discount. I was going to make sure you were cared for. You were going to surround the transaction with enough paperwork to make exploitation look like concern." He stared at me. "So that is what you think of me? I think you were willing to remove me from my home to keep your business alive. It would have worked." "No." I slid his own financial projection across the table. He did not touch it. "You haven't read the updated numbers," I said. "I know my business." "Then tell me how long the house profit would keep the restaurant open." He did not answer. 6 months? I asked. Daniel looked toward Brooke. 5? His jaw tightened. 4 months, I said, under your best projection. That projection was conservative. It assumed the house resold near the top of the market. We could have increased revenue. You lost money for 9 consecutive months. We needed time. You wanted me to surrender 46 years of equity and pay more than $6,000 a month for a room so you could purchase 4 more months of losses. Daniel finally picked up the projection. His eyes moved down the page. The anger left his face. Not all at once. First came disbelief, then calculation, then something close to shame. The transaction had not been a rescue. It had been a delay. He had nearly taken my home without even saving what he claimed he was protecting. "What happens now?" he asked. That was the real reversal. Daniel had entered the room expecting my signature. Now he was asking what his own choices would cost. I told him I would not invest in the restaurant, guarantee debt, or authorize the sale of my house. Clear Haven would withdraw from the transaction. He would provide a written list of every person or company to whom he had claimed authority over my affairs. He would return my house key, delete my financial information, and have no future access to my medical or banking records. Brooks' attorney would handle the retirement account matters separately. Daniel laughed without humor. "So you're leaving us with nothing?" "No." I explained the one offer I was willing to make. If Daniel and Brooks' home entered foreclosure, I was prepared to work through an independent trust to help preserve temporary housing for Sadie. Brooke would be allowed to remain under a formal rental agreement if she separated her finances from Daniel and maintained the property. Daniel would receive no ownership, no control, and no cash. He looked stunned. "You would help my wife and put me out?" "I would protect your daughter without protecting your deception." "That is cruel." "No. Cruel would be making Sadie absorb the consequences of a plan she never created." Brooke began crying quietly. Daniel searched the room for someone who would soften what was happening. For years, that person had been me. I remained silent. Not as a strategy, because there was nothing left to explain. The restaurant closed 3 weeks later. The equipment lenders repossessed what secured their loans. Daniel and Brooke separated after her attorney reviewed the retirement account transfers. The investor withdrew from Clear Haven and confirmed in writing that my assets would not appear in any future proposal. The accountant surrendered the documents connected to my transaction and later faced a professional review. I provided records when asked and made no attempt to turn the matter into a public spectacle. Daniel moved into a furnished apartment. For several weeks, he sent messages accusing me of destroying his life. I answered once. I wrote, "I stopped you from using mine. What remains is yours to rebuild." Then I stopped responding. Rebecca stayed with me for 10 days. We talked about more than Daniel. She told me how often she had mistaken my confidence in her for indifference. I told her I had been proud of her, but careless with that pride. I had assumed a strong child needed less reassurance. We did not repair 30 years in one visit. We did stop pretending there was nothing to repair. Brooke found work managing a medical office. When the mortgage on their home eventually went into default, the independent trust arrangement kept Sadie from losing her home immediately. Brooke paid rent based on what she could afford. The arrangement was reviewed every year. It was not unlimited rescue disguised as kindness. Sadie came to my house on alternating weekends. Sometimes we built small wooden boxes in the basement workshop. Sometimes she sat on the screened porch, doing homework while I read. She did not talk about Willow Creek often. One afternoon, she looked up from her laptop. "You know they have a swimming pool." "At Willow Creek?" "And better desserts than you." "That is possible. They also have people who clean the gutters." "I have Harold's nephew." She laughed. Daniel and I did not speak for 4 months. Then, he called on a Sunday morning. I almost let it go to voicemail. I answered. He did not begin with an apology. Real apologies rarely arrive as finished speeches. He told me he had accepted a job as a regional sales representative for a food distributor. He was attending counseling. He had started seeing Sadie according to the schedule Brooke established. Then he said, "I still think you could have helped me differently." "I did help you differently." He was quiet. "I don't know how to come back from this." "You do not come back by asking me to forget it." "What do I do?" "You tell the truth when it costs you something. Then you do it again." We began with short phone calls. I did not give him a key. I did not lend him money. I did not restore his access to my records. Forgiveness did not require pretending trust had returned. Trust would have to grow through repeated evidence. A year later, Daniel came to my house for Thanksgiving. Rebecca and her family were there. Brooke and Sadie arrived separately. The meal was awkward in places. No one pretended the past had vanished. Daniel brought a grocery store pie. Ellen would have complained about the crust and then eaten 2 slices. After dinner, I stepped onto the screened porch. The evening was cold, and the windows had begun to fog. Sadie followed me, carrying 2 mugs. She handed me Ellen's yellow mug and sat in the chair beside mine. Inside, Rebecca was laughing with her boys. Brooke wrapped leftovers at the counter. Daniel quietly helped clear the dining room table without being asked. Nothing was perfect. That was not the same as nothing being healed. My home remained mine. More importantly, my choices remained mine. For most of my life, I believed a good father prevented his children from falling. I finally understood that sometimes the wiser act was to stop placing yourself beneath them as a cushion. Love can offer a hand. It should never be forced to sign itself away. Tell me in the comments whether you would have given Daniel another chance, and subscribe to Wise Dad Stories for more stories about family, dignity, and quiet strength.